everybody. Love to. We got it. Click, you got it. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. What a wonderful opportunity. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. It's kind of interesting because we had a delay in these webinars. I missed this. I missed seeing all y'all as a group, and it's always nice to gather. And hopefully, it makes this time a little bit more cherished. Not only see each other's faces, catch up, figure out we got sisters in Laguna that or in San Jose. That's the awesome connection I think that technology brings and gives us. So I'm glad we could gather with each and every one of y'all, and from across the country we're here to serve the great mission of Cross and to be able to connect. So but with all things, we'll start with a little prayer this morning. And I came across this. I was out with the crew last weekend, and I came across this little novena, and I use it as my morning prayer, and I'm going to do the same for us this morning. So bear with me as I launch my little prayer, my screen here. So let us get going. All right. As you know, our theme this year is we grow in community, but we'll go ahead and jump right into our prayer. It's called a litany of trust. And again, I use it as my morning prayer, and it's really powerful for me, and so I wanted to share it. Let us place ourselves in God's presence. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. From the belief that I have to earn your love, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that I am unlovable, deliver me, Jesus. From the false security that I have what it takes, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that trusting you will leave me more destitute, deliver me, Jesus. From all suspicion of your words and promises, deliver me, Jesus. From the rebellion against childlike dependency on you, deliver me, Jesus. From refusals and reluctancies in accepting your will, deliver me, Jesus. From anxiety about the future, deliver me, Jesus. From resentment or excessive preoccupation with the past, deliver me, Jesus. From restless self-seeking in the present moment, deliver me, Jesus. From disbelief in your love and presence, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being asked to give more than I have, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that my life has no meaning or worth, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of what love demands, deliver me, Jesus. From discouragement, deliver me, Jesus. That you are continually holding me, sustaining me, loving me, Jesus, I trust in you. That your love goes deeper than my sins and failings and transforms me, Jesus, I trust in you. That not knowing what tomorrow brings is an invitation to lean on you, Jesus, I trust in you. That you are with me in my suffering, Jesus, I trust in you. That my suffering united to your own will bear fruit in this life and the next, Jesus, I trust in you. That you will not leave me orphan, that you are present in your church, Jesus, I trust in you. That your plan is better than anything else, Jesus, I trust in you. That you always hear me, in your goodness, always respond to me, Jesus, I trust in you. That you give me the grace to accept forgiveness and to forgive others, Jesus, I trust in you. That you give me all the strength that I need for what is asked, Jesus, I trust in you. That my life is a gift, Jesus, I trust in you. That you will teach me to trust you, Jesus, I trust in you. That you are my Lord and my God, Jesus, I trust in you. That I am your beloved one, Jesus, I trust in you. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. I have up on the screen, and I'm going to stop it here just for a second, and we'll go back and forth. But I have up on the screen our recap from last week. So what I wanted to do, since it's been a month with our, as y'all know, our affinity groups that we're meeting back and forth with. So I wanted to be able to just take a second to dust the cobwebs off, to be able to help guide you and kick you back into learning gear. Obviously, the great gift of being able to be lifelong learners is that we continue to craft and think through all the gifts that we have, but all that we've learned, and kind of recap some of that. And so without going too deep, I wanted to be able to share with you some of the high-level insights. If you could not join us for our Imagine Abundance book review, hopefully by now you've read it. If not, don't tell me. But I will say that it is such a short read, and if you haven't read it, it just continues to encourage you in the work. And so as a quick recap, I just wanted to put out a couple of points for those that may have missed it, just so that you're reminded of the work that we do, and why we do that. And so this is the out of the recap. This is a few of the high points of the book, right? That being worthy of generosity is a high point of the book, and knowing that we're stewarding our potential and the potential of others. That money follows mission, the outward service, the need and desperation for prayer in all of this, the decision that we should have enthusiasm in the work that we do, rejoicing in the good fortune of others, and then obviously that donors are subjects but not objects, and that we are called to a philanthropic imagination. And that is part of what we'll tie into today, which is kind of neat because there was a point in the book. And with that, we'll go to our statement, but I wanted to just stop and claim a second in case anybody had any big, because this is just for building community. So any aha moments or anything that anybody wanted to share from reading the book since we last met that was powerful, or any times that you may have kind of after reading that book, kind of one of those pieces have come to life to you in your ministry or in your mission. I know we have Father Hurley on here, who I know knows Carrie also, and knows the great work that she does. Since that book time, as we talked about, Carrie is now the head of Catholic Charities, was named the head of Catholic Charities USA. But I say that just because it's an insightful piece, and if anybody has anything to share before we move on, this is the point of these calls, is to be able to build community, share insights. So feel free to be able to do that now if y'all do. Any thoughts? Any communal words there? All right. Well, y'all know how to use the hand feature, so don't hesitate. That's by pressing that little reactions button at the bottom. It gives you a few options, and one of them is raise your hand. A little yellow hand pops up. So feel free to be able to use that at any point as we talk about that. But as always, that book is such a solid resource for us as in this ministry, because if we don't continue to be able to push ourselves with stuff like being reminded of what this work does, then we lose the very spirit of why we do it. So with that, I'm going to go back to share my screen, and we'll kind of dive into the old the webinar for today. And again, I'll also take, if you don't want to do all that stuff with that little hand, I'll take one of these. So don't be afraid to just raise your hand. I can call on you as I see everybody on the screen. We'll take you as you are. Okay. So what we're talking about today is the case for support and category giving. So a lot of times people will say, you'll hear this in fundraising language. And one of the big things that we've talked about is we don't want too much insider baseball when we talk about fundraising, because if we speak that insider language, if you remember from a very early on webinar that we did, it's confusing to folks. And so I know that the very first thing that we need to be able to share is, I saw the webinar, I jumped on, what is this case that he keeps telling me, this case for support and this category giving? So basically what a case for support is in the nonprofit world, is it's a way to be able to tell your story It is understanding that inside of defining the case, that you're able to be able to say inside of a case statement, what is it that we're talking about? What is it that that Cross does? And there's a couple questions inside of a case statement that you want to be able to address, and it really is the heart of what this entire call is about. But it's this understanding of, to the donor, when you have a case statement, that you need to be able to share the idea of why me, why now, and what do you want me to do? So imagine you're in the pew and you're asking this question, why me, why now, and what do you want me to do? And I know that sounds maybe oversimplified in this idea of a case statement, but I think it's good for you to understand the fundraising side of what a case statement is supposed to accomplish, because the reality is you, although you have a piece of paper, a brochure that you're going to be able to put in front of them, it also is understanding that your words are part of that case statement that's necessary to be able to proliferate and to be able to share this word. So back up for a second. Case statement. If the case statement asks why me, why now, and what do you want me to do, how do most nonprofits be able to share that? And a lot of times when the nonprofit, if you ever hear a nonprofit talk about, hey, do you have a case statement? Basically, they're looking for a one-sheet page, front and back, that kind of answers those questions. Heavy in pictures, heavy in emotion, heavy in telling you about what the story is. But a lot of times, if you ever hear the word, hey, do y'all have a case statement? You're thinking about a brochure in some way that answers those questions. So the point being is that you'll see and come across case statements all over. But where would you see them in parish life most is you would see them in capital campaigns and in parishes. That's where they're most popular, used. And so when you go to a parish, I'm sure many of you have, as you're stationed in a parish or come to a parish where they're doing a capital campaign, you will see a brochure that just looks like their campaign materials. Well, most of the time, that main piece of material for the campaign is called their case statement. And that case statement should answer, this is the part of the refining of you should be able to read that document, and it should be able to answer why me, why now, and what do you want me to do? So that you're becoming trained in your eye of when you see these things of like, hey, are they really getting the point across? And what is this, what is this? What are they really telling that story? And how that the main goal of a case statement is to expand the voice from the leader to be able to have many people that then are able to understand what it is that the organization is providing and what they do. So your question may be to be able to say, well, inside of a case statement, what is a case statement for Cross Catholic? Well, if in the nonprofit world, it's that one sheet, that case statement can be brought across a lot of times by voice, by word. And what happens is when you're sharing that case statement, obviously that is an important piece to be able to answer those questions. Is like, what is it that you do, and how do you do that succinctly, and how do you do that kind of in a way that allows the person receiving the word to answer those questions so that they know how it's tied to it. So most of the time, if you would imagine a group, if one person has the information and the rest need to hear it or share it, you don't want it to be stuck where you're the only person being the champion for a cause. So why is a case statement or paper important in fundraising and nonprofit world? Is because what you want is, you don't want to just convince them to be a donor. You want to convince them to be an advocate for the poor, for Cross Catholic. So let me repeat that. The goal of this is not to just be able to convince individuals to make a gift, but to truly also to be an advocate. Now, I know some of you might take me by letter of law. So you tell me I don't need to raise. No. That it's important to be able to know that obviously our goal as your goal as OPs as you go out is to be able to invite and ask them to be a part of the case. But really what we're seeking as part of that, as part of their gift, is that their gift is a reflection of their care and love for the organization, for Cross, and how that care then translates, that really we would desire for them to be an advocate for the poor, and hopefully an advocate for the poor through Cross Catholic. And so that is the power of a case statement and why we talk about this, because framing this is important. That sometimes in our day-to-day routine, we're thinking, I just need to go and ask for money. But we're also going to be able to ask for advocates. And the case statement helps expand their voice. What you're doing is you're giving them pointers and you're giving them an item to be able to expand their voice. So what's our case statement that you have every week? It's the brochure, right? It is the information that you have there. And so when you see that more as a tool for them to not just only make a gift, but to also be an advocate for Cross, then you can then encourage them to be able to say, hey, this is not only do you have something powerful in your hand about an ask and information about it, but it's something that you can share to be able to know, how do we address the poor as a church? And here is how we're able to do that. And so the case statement, a case statement in general, is a very, very powerful way for you to be able to have an added voice left behind, so that your voice is left behind. I'm going to stop there because I think that I'm going to pause there, I should say, because I think that that's a fairly significant shift in understanding what the brochure does and what case statements are about and why nonprofits have them. It's to be able to help share that ownership and to be able to create and form advocates. And so I just wanted to bring up a thought or two from y'all, if y'all would, if you had questions about that, but also any thoughts around how you've used that as a piece to be able to help share ownership and advocacy for Cross Catholic. Anybody want to share a thought or two?
Cody, I would like to, if I may. I have heard, it's very clear to me today what you say, that to convince people not to be a donor, but to be an advocate for the poor through Cross Catholic Outreach. I think that's very powerful, because most of the time what I do is I try to get a donation, but what you are saying to me today is very powerful. If we can help other peoples to become advocates, this is going to spread faster in a larger way, and we are going to get more people who are not even in the pews. And I think that's the power of be convincing with the brochure. And some people say, let me take the brochure home, I'm going to ask somebody else in my family. When you help people to identify that charity can happen not only within the temple, but outside the temple, because the church goes beyond the temple building. So I appreciate that insight that you are reminding us of. I think it's very, very powerful.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that, Father Sergio. And again, this is a continued craft, refining of our own conversations and thoughts. Father Hurley, and then Father Bauer.
Yeah, one of the things that, Corey, that you were talking about and what Father Sergio just said, I think is really important. And I think the other piece, when I shadowed several weeks ago with Father Bernard, I thought he brought us back to another case statement at the very end of his homily. And it was, Lord, when did I see you hungry and feed you? Lord, when were you thirsty and I gave you clean drinking water, as he said. And I think the ways that we can tie it, it's not just, I think about, it's for me, as I'm getting my first happening this coming weekend, it's how does Cross Catholic also carry out the case statement of Jesus' mission? That's the audience we have there. They're there because it's the Lord's Day and those sorts of things. And so I thought what Bernard had done was very creative in the sense of how do we tie it back into the church? So we're helping them fulfill their mission as Christians. And you know, we believe that Cross Catholic is a key part of that. And that's why each of us is committing ourselves, myself, as I'm entering into this senior ministry status, you know, as a preferential option for the poor in my own life, you know, at this point. So I just thought that the case statement that we have with the church and what will be measured by, I think Cross Catholic certainly gives all of us, me and others, an opportunity to exemplify how we can keep that mission alive. And I think Father Sergio's idea is a very good one in the sense, I'm going to incorporate that in my homily this weekend, is if you know someone that may be very open to supporting this element of the gospel response, please take an extra brochure with you.
No doubt. No, thanks for connecting that dot, and to be able to understand, which is great. And we'll talk about in just a second, Father Hurley, which is the goal, right? Is to it's connecting them to the case statement for Jesus Christ himself. And so that's great affirmation. All right. I said Father Bauer, and then Tom, and then Father Commanda.
Good morning. Yeah, I'll piggyback on what's already been said is, you know, as we travel, you know, a lot of times you'll have visitors at a parish. And so I'll try to encourage them to take an extra brochure to share with their pastor, and I'll give them one of my business cards and see how that plays out. And, you know, it's not unusual among the parishioners. They'll tell me in conversation after Mass, oh, gee, I really like this and all. And I says, well, do you have any family or friends you want to share this with? Take a few extra brochures and let them look it over. So, you know, it's kind of what I learned in business early in the 70s. I remember one of my mentors, he really taught me a lot. And back then money was tight, very tight. And I remember to get a box of 1,000 business cards cost $10. And so he noticed I was kind of being very stingy with them. And he says, Alan, business cards are like popcorn. You use them liberally. He said, all you have to do is have one of them hit, and you'll pay for that box and much more. And that's what taught me how to plant the seeds wherever you can. And, you know, it's kind of like with that parable, you know, the Lord scatters his word indiscriminately everywhere, and some hits on good ground and some doesn't. So you just try to plant seeds.
And that's our brochure. So use them liberally in that way, right? I mean,
that Father Alan is dangerous. He is wonderful. I was with him in Atlanta, and I almost give a donation after his preaching. Let me say that.
Oh, God bless you.
I love it. He's dangerous. I love it. Good.
Thank you.
Right, Father Tom, then Father Commanda.
Yeah, and this is the real Father Tom. You know, a couple months ago, we had a competitor out there. I love the brochure, but one thing I'd like to see changed in the brochure is where the web address is at the bottom of the envelope. I think it should also be on the other part, and then we could tell them, take it home, and you can look it up during the week. All the different missions that we sponsor, and that would give them a better way to look it up later on after they've made their donation. You know, now certainly those that take it home to make their donation at home would have it, but if they don't have the brochure, the envelope part, they don't have that web address. Just a suggestion.
No, good. I appreciate that, real Father Tom. No, there's no doubt about it. There's your words are as powerful as that of kind of guiding their eyes to certain elements, and so it sounds like you do that, Father Commanda.
Yeah, there are two ways that I do it. First, I try to explain to them that I go there as the voice of the people that we are helping overseas. But also I go there to ask them to become the voice, so that together we are voices. And when we are so many voices, the impact can be very, very big. And the second way that I do that, the ladies in the office, they remember that I always ask for more brochures, more, because I
Yeah.
try to put as many as I can in the pews, as many as I can in every single exit doors. So during the homily, I will invite them to take those home to share with their loved ones. At the end, before the final blessing, I ask them again intentionally, please take as many as you can to share with your loved ones so that together we may make a bigger impact. So that's the way I do it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that insight. Well, Farrell? Still muted, but there we go. We got you
I
now.
like the additions that have been put into the flyer in the past few months, where they've put in the blessings on the phone and the QR block and all of that. But having been a
No
school
doubt.
teacher for a while, I learned that props are very important. That's how you keep attention. I give out the flyer as I begin my homily with the help of many of the parishes I've been to lately. The Knights of Columbus seem to be the guardians of the parish and taking care of all of that. And I make it known to them it's a gift, and take as many as you want. And I begin the transition from the homily into the flyer itself with the very quote on the front page. I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was a stranger. And go through the flyer. I like the older flyer better, which had many different characters in it that you could introduce to the people. We just have that poor little Franciscan on the front page working in Kenya and that. And I conclude my homily by making use of that same quote from Matthew's Gospel, which I believe comes up in 2 weeks on the Feast of Christ the King as the Gospel that Sunday. And I've come to find out that people truly appreciate that. And I make a lot of use of that page with the amounts, which gives the statement of how we do that, feeding the hungry. And that I had an experience Sunday that was a sort of rewarding. I talked about the mentioning of digging wells in various places and the cost and everything else. And a woman on the way out said, "Father, this is a sizable check. I just want you to know we just dug a well on our property and we know how expensive it is. May this help a poor family get fresh drink water." So that case study does give an opportunity for people to think about it. But I really emphasize those, the QR block, the web page, and the blessings that can address, which can be used on our phones. And in fact, I catch a lot of people doing exactly that right during the homily, checking it on their
There
phone
you
while
go.
they're working. So
Right.
it's a good thing there's no Sisters of Mercy around to come down and
Yeah,
put
that
their
slap your
phones
hand.
away.
That's really good. That's good. Good insight. Thank you for sharing that. And so let's do, and Father Bo, you have your hand up. Do you want one more thing to say or add to it? And then we'll jump into the next part. Or okay, your hand was all right, no worries. All right, so here's what we're gonna do is I'm gonna jump back into the presentation.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Well,
Okay, yeah, no, I know. I just
tried to unmute. But about the brochure, one thing I would like to see added, I like that it has the picture of Jim Kavanaugh with the Pope, but those things are a dime a dozen. I think it should have a caption at the bottom that says, "We are one of those select few charities worldwide that actually has papal endorsement." I think it's more than, anyone can get a picture with the Pope. I've never had the opportunity, but I mean, you see them all the time. But I think the thought that we actually have papal endorsement is a big point in my book.
Indeed. No, thank you. All right, yeah, I saw your hand, the little yellow hand up, so that's why I was calling. Good. All right, hey, that's fantastic feedback. I love the interchange because that's the kind of thing that helps us to be able to feed off of each other, kind of hear insight, glean little nuggets from each other to be able to go out. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and we're going to go back into one of the other points. Some of the high level points I wanted to make sure I shared today was making sure we define what a case was, so you know that. I wanted to be able to spend a little time on making sure the connection to the Word of God, and then also kind of what is your pitch, the storytelling, some best practices, and a connection to major gifts and some creativity around that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to first kind of go back and to be able to help you kind of think through inside of the case statement. There are obviously, that's one of the great benefits of Cross, right? We have so much that Cross does. Has anybody ever been to a Cheesecake Bistro, right? It's like there's these these restaurants and they have a menu, and the menu is just so massive, and you just sit there and you're like, you get everything from meatballs to cheesecake, but there's everything. They have Chinese food, they have everything just that you could eat there. And the reason why I share that is because sometimes those menus can be a little confusing. And it can be like, if you go to the site and you have somebody that has a true passion about something, it's amazing if you go to Cross's website and your own portal to be able to get the information. You know, what is it that you're fired up about? What is it? Is it water? Is it housing? Is it health? Is it feeding the hungry? Is it disaster, education, children, hope? If there's one thing that you could say, it's that you never shy away from having enough angles to be able to share the great case, if you will, of of Cross. So inside of that, what we kind of call that is that categorical giving, that category giving of being able to understand that there's so much there, but that really what we want to focus in on as we talk about that is, one, how we do and how we focus on a certain area in fundraising without getting the donors lost in the menu. Right? So getting donors lost in the menu is if you go too broad or too many things, and if you will, when you're sharing the case about Cross Catholic and you just leave them there and say, like, we do everything for everybody, and then you just kind of you leave that can be very difficult. But the reason why it is important is to be able to share inside of a case statement, you have these areas that are important. And sometimes you don't know how and when it could guide you, but in your preparation each week for this, you obviously, and I want to be able to tie this first, for you to be able to see how that would guide you to that, what brings you to that decision, what support of materials and statistics that you have to be able to talk about it, but then also a very important piece, which was connecting it to the Gospels. So inside of that, then another question you could say is like, what part of the case statement do I favor? Do I find myself going out and just kind of talking about water? What is the cause that I love to support? Is it housing? Is it the hunger? Do you find that there's a better impact in the way that you preach and that the way you tell stories around these areas of Cross Catholic's impact? And then what cause are you emotionally tied to? Understanding that part of this is your own personal favor. You have a sweet spot of something that might even touch your heart, which then makes you more passionate to be able to talk about something. But what I'll say is, and this is the first point that I wanted to make, is that when it's tied and connected to the Word of God, what is it inside of that allows you to be able to preach to it, to be able to make it that it is connected to the gospel? And I think one of the things that we keep going back to, and I think that this is for each one of us, is that the gospel really is the gospel itself, or the readings, whatever's inspired for you to be able to preach on, is not the main way to be able to get stuck into being able to talking about a specific category of giving for a case. So for example, what is Corey talking about? Well, if that weekend's gospel is the woman of the well, the woman at the well, and you're preaching on that, how can you tie that obviously into Cross Catholic? It would almost be lost if you didn't do it. It's like the stories being handed to you on a platter, the desire for water and the need, and how you could kind of tie that into the very work of Cross Catholic. But what I'm mentioning here is the importance, not necessarily getting into your conversations of how you preach about something, because that's your craft and it's your calling, that's your vocation. But what I'm trying to encourage is the connection back to the case statements and these category givings of how not to get stuck there, that if that weekend's gospel is about water, that you only stay at water. So it's important to be able to know that you're using and you're utilizing the very nature and the gift of the scriptures, but as simple stepping stones to the idea that cross serves with water, but you're not staying there, then you're then making it to stepping stones to the greater offerings of Cross Catholic. Now, why that is important? It's important for a few reasons. One is we don't want to be able to just get people to be able to say, oh, is Cross just about clean water, right? That's one downside of it. The other downside is what I've found, again, from being able to observe and kind of coach, is that when you get stuck in just one area of Cross's benefits, you don't, or the impact, you don't necessarily always appeal to everybody in the pew into the different ways that Cross can affect. So if somebody has housing, or somebody has healthcare, or children, or disaster as kind of their emotional tug, and you only stayed at water, you obviously won't be able to share those things, but it also limits kind of what people are in their mind is part of the case statement of what Cross can do. Now, I get that this is a nuanced challenge for each one of you, because as you go out, your own gift is to be able to preach from your heart and preach with passion, and then to connect and make the ask with passion. And it's important also, let me just reiterate here, to not get stuck by just telling the same old story, but then not also just get stuck on one side, on one angle or one part of the conversation, because you also need that to be able to personalize it. So I've heard a few of you tell water stories, really powerful water stories in villages and places where Cross is brought. And that's an important part of this, especially the storytelling. And that's kind of where I wanted to go, is category giving is the perfect launch and connection to storytelling. So we've had a couple webinars on storytelling and the art and the craft of being able to emotionalize it, to bring it to be personal, to bring it to be able to have your own way of telling that story. So it doesn't just is like, we need water, and don't you know people need clean water. It needs to be much more impactful for that. But to connect that, to be able to each category giving, is to be able to go study up on the impact specifically of how water and wells, right, in that setting work, and what the impact of their dollar can give, because it really is an entrance to major gifts. Like we just had an example of somebody that brought in the idea of housing. And when you mention the housing, and then also you tell a story about housing, well, their gift allows them to be able to wrap around a larger gift amount when you're able to share a story or a case. But if you just stopped at the house, then it's also a limitation. So this is a great balance here. I'm not saying anybody is ever going to do it just perfectly. In fact, nobody will. But I think the good part about this conversation is that in category giving and in case giving, it's being able to help as you're crafting your message, and as you're crafting your homily, and as you're crafting your pitch, how to be able to nuance it with a specific of a category giving, but it not let it stand there or sit there as the final ask or connection to Cross Catholic. And that is truly an art to be able to do, because I know that that's difficult, especially if it ties to the gospel or the readings, and you're kind of influenced in that way. But you don't want to have it stop there. You want it to be able to be informed into that area, but you also want to share the greater case of Cross Catholic. Any questions there? Because it's a nuance, but I think it's important to be able to understand that what you're navigating in a few of these pieces is difficult. And as you hold up the brochure, as you hold up these stories or these individuals that you're kind of telling the story of, it's how to hit that story in a timely manner, but then to be able to move on after. And obviously that comes with practice, and comes with practice of you saying, okay, I'm going to tell the water story because the gospel is about water, but I'm not going to stay there. I need to be able to, what's my connector word that's going to bring me back into that, you know? And so if it's a story about a little villager and you use their name and you personalize it, then you'd say, well, just like that, there's wells all over the country that need help. then we also serve food and disaster and shelter, and then you're able to kind of bring into the larger case and then make your pitch. So again, I see Father Bauer, your hand went back up. I don't know if
Can I
that was
jump in?
Yeah, it's up. What I was thinking is, I think this is where the brochure can be very helpful, is it gives those 5 examples. And as
That's
I
correct.
walk through people, I emphasize, that I tend to emphasize the water, probably because that's some of the really startling experiences I had in my life, as well as the housing. But I will say, I'll tell people at the bottom of that panel make an impact, underneath more information. I go through that a little bit. And then I said, I'll let you read the panel on your own. And I said, you'll notice it emphasized those 5 fundamental human needs we all have: food, shelter, healthcare, education, and employment. And I find that helps. And then I try to get people to think about exploring our website. I underscore it's an excellent resource. It should answer any and all questions you might have about Cross Catholic, what we do, how we do, where we do it, etc. And I said, as you go through that, you might find you want to maybe support a particular country or project, and this will give you lots of ideas. And if you want to do that, just attach a note to your offering and we'll honor that. That's what I try to do.
I appreciate that. Go ahead, Father. Yeah, jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, and then
This is Father Tom with a face, not a hand. Anyway,
that's brilliant. I love it because he's on screen. Y'all got that? That was fantastic.
well, one of the things one of the challenges is always trying to connect the scriptures of the weekend with what we're doing as for Cross. I find this constant.
Absolutely.
Like this last weekend, I had to tangle with that, and I find it occurred to me that it was about stewardship of time, talent, and treasure, and with the 5 foolish virgins, the 5 wise ones. So I finally ended up talking about we must use our time wisely. Some of us squander our time.
Yes, fantastic.
And I call them. I remind them that you can be a missionary right where you sit, right where you are, right where you are. Saint Teresa of the Little Flower was a missionary, never left the convent.
I love that.
We can be
That's
the
great.
same. And this is part of serving in the missionary effort. So I try to always, and it's about food, water, and housing for me. That's what I'm always into for talking to the people. And already I'm not out this next weekend, but I know the key to the weekend, the 3 readings, is all about responsibility, which calls us to be responsible as Christians, as sharing the life that we have and the goods that we have, and the sense of what we can do for others in furthering the reign of God and building up the body of Christ,
right?
And in the sense of and this works through Cross Catholic Outreach. So, and I'm trying to connect that with the sense of Thanksgiving coming up as well, being thankful for the grateful heart for our blessings, and how do we show this to others? God has blessed each one of us. How do we bless others? But it's always a struggle for me to try to get the scriptures hooked together for the weekend, because you've got the bridge that goes from one to the other.
The bridge is the key word, Father Tom, and you're right, because I think one of the things that you come up with, that you obviously fully understand, is that the bridge can lead you to a place, like, so for example, if it's water, but you can't stay at the water, right? And so that was
right.
It's great to be able to know that, like, I love it. Even with the virgins, like a stewardship of kind of being prepared. Each one of those is going to find we want it to find your own voice. We don't want to have a unified message that you just say, okay, this isn't a robot, right? You want to be able to have your very nature come out of it and share of it, but at the same time, craft it so that it kind of goes into the larger case for Cross, and then obviously the pitch. So that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Bob, I see you unmuted. So you wanted to share something, and then Father Sergio.
Yeah, a couple of things about the why you, why now kind of thing.
Sure.
I think I do emphasize that it's why you is because we're from the United States, and we're the wealthiest nations, and that the Catholic community has accumulated a lot of wealth, and that the why now is that access to the kingdom has to do with the corporal works of mercy.
Yeah.
And I think every time I mention them and I indicate that if you look at all of the communities who are partnered with Cross Catholic, they're all related to a project of one of those corporal works of mercy.
Yeah.
So it kind of spreads it spreads it across the thing. I think that sense of who we are as Catholics in the United States and our ability to respond, not so much our responsibility, in the way that Jesus himself says is required in order to be in the kingdom. I think it helps me to not just stay with whatever of those corporate works of mercy story I might tell in a particular place.
No, that's fantastic, Bob. And I'll even add to that to be able to say we've used this in a few cases. I'd use in my CCD class. If your family has like $500 in your bank account, you're in the top 2% wealthiest people in the world. It's like a crazy statistic of like how, and sometimes without guilting them, I know Catholics have guilt down. Well, we don't want to guilt them, but it is an awareness. And I think that was your point, Bob, which is the point. We want to bring them aware of how blessed they are so that we can bless others. And that's what I love. If you remember, that is the quote inside. Does anybody remember this from the book, Imagine Abundance? It's great to be blessed. It's better to be a blessing. Right. And isn't that a statement of gratitude that it's like we are called to be a blessing to others? Father Sergio?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to talk about a little bit about the booklet because for me it has been very helpful. I am new with Cross Catholic. I don't know what Cross Catholic does with the money. Father Alan gave us those 5 aspects that are well explained when you say, with $75 you can feed 233 kids, and you tell people that each meal is 15 cents. People just get excited about giving, or that $75 will make it for medical services for a child, or $250 for a business, or $500 for drinking water, or $2,500 for a house. And then I don't know where that is taking place, which I would love to know, where those houses are being built or the water has been put together. But, that I can enlighten my example with a reality that is tangible for people. Like this weekend, I was in a parish that 80% were Ecuadorians. So I was able to tell them, I was in Ecuador, a pastor in Ecuador in Las Peñas, in a very poor neighborhood. So the place. To those places we want to reach. So that invites people to be generous when they can feel the place. It's funny because like 80% were Ecuadorians and 20% were from Dominican Republic. And I am going to Dominican Republic in December. So I was able to tell people, if you are donating today, maybe one of your family members or somebody that is going to benefit from this, because we are bringing the Box of Joy in December. But I didn't know where the boxes of joy were going to, or where the drinking water has been put to work. If we can get more of that information, if we can put flesh to our message, to our penny, to our donation. You and I, we know, because we talk about this in the CCI, in the Stewardship Congress. When you put a face or flesh or name to that penny or that dollar or that check, people are more enthusiastic and they can relate and they become ambassadors. They say, they are coming to our country. Why don't we help? Which is what you said before, they become advocates more than donors. So I will appreciate if I get a little bit more information, because I say, go to the webpage, which is a great tool. And it says, we have been helping 36 countries and we have been giving $337 million. Yeah. But to whom and where? How can I give to that some faces or names that Mary Catherine Hillcrop says, when you preach grace, naming grace. We need to be able to name grace when we preach and when we talk about this fundraising. I suggest it's just my insight.
So it's good insight, and thank you very much. And it's always nice to be able to have the insight of a new OP to come in to be able to share that, because it's a good reminder for all of us, a few things. So it brings up 2 points that I wanted to make today. A portal, as you saw earlier, a portal into major gifts, which we'll talk about. And then also, I wanted to be able, it's good to just have this and to see who of y'all do this, because I think it's an important piece that is a little bit refined. So I don't want everybody to be overwhelmed by this. But I do think, just as you mentioned, and you say, look, for more information, you could go to the website and you could point to it. Father Bauer said that earlier, but on the bottom of the envelope. But maybe you could add to that a little bit of what Father Sergio was just mentioning. If you'd like to see more stories of impact and to watch some videos of how these wells are done and how the people are fed, I would encourage you to go to our website and click on the button for YouTube. And in there, we have videos that you can watch for Cross Catholic of the impact that we do worldwide. And I think one of those things allows them, not only in that advocacy role, but it drives them to the website and it drives them to be able to see some of that impact. And so you kind of set me up a little bit, because that was one of the important points I wanted to tell today, which was about bringing them to dive a little deeper. There's no way in your time that you could ever squeeze it all into your homily and into your pitch. That's the hardest thing, is like, you obviously have to cut certain things out. So as you're crafting that, a point to the website and if you will, a bank of videos can really help them kind of go explore. Like, don't just take my word for it. Like you're saying, the impact's powerful. Go explore their YouTube channel, go to their website, click on the YouTube button, and go see some of these stories, learn about it, see the plight of the poor. The gospel calls us to that. And that invitation then allows you. And so then that is your homework, is when you're on your next plane, if you have the data package, go into the Cross Catholic YouTube channel, watch some of those videos, see some of the things that they have that they're posting. And if those things don't scratch your itch enough, then maybe that's part of what we need to be able to provide back to the Cross team, is to be able to say, I'd really like a video on this or that. Maybe we have one out there, maybe we don't. But I think one of the best parts is the more that we dive into those kind of things, obviously we know the power of video. You look at the internet, you look at social media, video is king. They say content is king and video is the king of the content. And so part of that is understanding from each one of y'all of, as you go to it, and Joanne just linked it into the bio for everyone to be able to go to the YouTube channel. If you can't link it, it's in the notes, or it's just at the top of our website. There's a little YouTube icon, and you just press that. It's quite easy to go to in your portal. And again, this isn't to distract you. It's just to be able to give you another tool in your tool belt, so that you could say, hey, if you want to see this, explore for yourself. But it's really fascinating what Cross does, and here's a video to be able to do that. So that was one of the first comments that I wanted to do, is to make sure I talked about the videos. The last one was about major gifts, and what Father Sergio said, and I heard a couple other people comment. When you talk about category giving, it is the number one way to be able to enter into the conversation or invite a donor into, most of the time, a larger gift. Why is that? Because they're able to personalize or wrap their mind around a specific project. What does a well cost? What does a house cost? What are those kind of things utilized for, to be able to bring not only to bring the preaching alive, the category giving, but to be able to then allow them to say, hey, you know what, maybe if my family and I could kind of get together and we could all go in to be able to start a house. But I will warn you that those numbers sometimes are a little, one, confusing, but two, also can be lost in the details. And this is the challenge as an OP, as somebody that's going out there as an advocate. It could easily be, say, like, oh, give me $50 and we'll put a roof on the house. And it's like, oh, never mind, I meant to say we'll feed them lunch, or something, and it's like for a year. So the stats are confusing. And so I would just encourage you, one, the brochure is the thing that they have in front of them, the case statement. So just going back to be able to check those numbers, and that certain of those words matter. So when you say like $2,500 is going to start a house, make sure you put the word start in there, not build the house, the whole house, right? So little things like that are important for you to just go back. I'm not saying fact check yourself, because I know none of you are doing that, like, but intentionally go back and to make sure that when you start pitching specific cases, that you're doing that in a way that matches the very numbers that if they went on the website that they saw that, they were like, wait a second, I thought Father said blah, so-and-so, and not this. And again, none of this is malicious, but I think it's just good to be able to talk about as we refine as fundraisers. We need it when you get into the impact world and you get into numbers. It obviously, to Father Sergio's point, it puts a little shine to the penny, which is good. We need to have that. But at the same time, we could easily get lost in some of the details or not give the right details to that. But it is the major gift portal, right? And then the other side of that is it's also case giving is a great, and this is my last point, and we'll kind of come and break into some of these the nuances of it. But this is the entry into what I find is really important about legacy giving or plan giving, right? So maybe you could enter into somebody, you could really make a significant impact by starting a home for $2,500, or you could also look at how that would be possibly part of your charitable giving as part of your legacy giving, and enter either the conversation of a story that you've had experience with, where somebody's named Cross Catholic in their will. Or if you don't have that experience, you could say that would be an invitation for you to consider. Maybe part of your legacy would be leaving a house for somebody, the cost of a full house in your will for a family, and that your life is giving life to others. So those kind of entries into major gifts and plan gift are perfect for category giving or case statement giving. So I wanted to be able to make sure that we talked about that. And we talked about maybe even examples of that. Father Sergio, I see your hand still up. Was that, do you have
No, I need to put it down. Thank you.
it's all right. So that's an important part, that the connection between the major giving and then obviously the specific case giving with getting the details right. Has anybody had any experience inside of using their brochure where it's, and again, this is a little bit of vulnerability, where that's backfired on you, where it hasn't gone well? And I think this is the safe space, the vulnerable space, as we preach, as you preach, and we kind of support you in this, that there's things or pitfalls to be able to use in case giving. I mentioned the one of kind of getting the stats wrong. That's an easy one. But does anybody have anything that they wanted to share that could be an improvement? I know this might sound like it's like, well, I'm not going to air my dirty laundry, and I'm not meaning it like that. I really mean it as having your insight of like saying, you know what, I tried this one time specifically with category giving, and it didn't seem to be able to really resonate. Because I think that's an important part if we're going to talk about case statements and category giving, that we also look at what things that we would do to be able to avoid it. I have a couple ideas, but I wanted to share, get your thoughts. Bob?
This is more a question than anything else. My impression is that with regard to being out in parishes, that the monies that we're talking about are going into a general fund. And I know that I heard in the past, directly really, that we're not supposed to be asking with regard to particular projects. And that's what it sounds like you're saying, is category giving and seeking major donors seems
No,
to not be related to that.
It's a good clarification. That's why and just to reiterate what I was saying about the stepping stones, right? It's not the end. What you're doing is, and this is that balance, right? So, and so I appreciate you clarifying, because you need to be able to personalize it, and you personalize it through category giving. but you don't stop that. You don't stop there by just saying, hey, would you give $2,500 to start a house? You need you're using those stories as specific examples, but then tying it in at the very end to the larger case giving. So you're correct in your assumption and your knowledge and idea that it is, you were told not to, and that is correct. What we're talking about today is how to be able to refine or utilize that category giving to get us to the end, so that we're not just stuck where just saying, hey, can y'all fund a well? But it's important to be able to personalize it to specific categories so that people can wrap their mind around of kind of like what Father Sergio is, what are you doing with the money? You know, because if you don't share those personalized ways to give, then a lot of times they can't imagine kind of the money you're giving. So you have to kind of land on a story. You have to land on a story to tell, even if you're using the gospel to be able to tell that. But the connector there is to then bring it to the larger cross impact. So you're right, Bob, and I didn't mean to confuse you on that as much as it was kind of sharing that tension that exists. Father Bernard and Father Bernie, and then I saw Father Bauer and Father Sergio.
Yeah, I just as perhaps a clarification for Bob and for the rest of us, category giving, you're fine. You know, if someone's interest is in water or someone's interest is in housing, that's a general category. What we're cautioned against is a specific project. So if you were to mention Wells of Salvation, for example, you know, which would be had been the Lenten and Advent campaigns, those funds become restricted. In the general categories, they can be used anywhere across the spectrum of projects, as long as it's in that you know, if it's water, it's water. If it's housing, it's housing. But so I think there are degrees of specificity, and what we're cautioned against is, I want to build a house in Guatemala in the village of Cuilapa
Right.
for this family, you know, that kind of thing. So hopefully that is also a clarification.
And Bob, just to affirm, I think that's the hard part, is because the tension is that you need to tell the story about that well in Guatemala, right? I mean, because if it's not personalized, then nobody's gonna like, well, what is that about? Yeah, they're not gonna feel the personalization of it. So it's a weird balance to be able to say there's a well in Guatemala, but also not say you're going to build the one down in the town next to it, that kind of thing. So
now, I don't find it a difficulty to tell a specific story, but my question had to do with like, well, it sounds to me like what you're talking about is not going for a story as part of the general theme, but actually looking for specific categories and looking for major donor kinds of stuff. I mean, I don't have a problem. I've never experienced a problem with telling a story about one or other of the folks who've been impacted. But that's why I'm getting a sense of that we're being directed to moving toward more specificity about asking people for stuff and directing at getting quote unquote major donors, rather than people contributing to the general funding, which I thought was our goal.
Yeah, and it still is. And so I think all I'm saying is that people are able to wrap their mind around very specific things. And so that is the balance. And I know that this is a nuance inside of fundraising, which is how to tell a story about a specific well in Guatemala, kind of share with them the passion of like, hey, how clean water is important, how they can give to clean water, because that's what Cross does. And that is kind of, all really we're saying is, and it helps people bring to Major Gifts, yes, and Plan Giving, but we just want to make sure that nobody just stays on just that well in Guatemala, that they can then add. So I think you're right, and I don't mean to confuse people with it. And this is the reason why we jump on these calls, is to be able to talk through this as a community, to be able to share that and how we guide them. Father Hurley, you had something?
Yeah, I think having been a development director for the Paulist Fathers once before, the last thing you want is all your giving to be restricted to various things. Otherwise, you have nothing to support the general fund with. But I think these are motivating factors. And one of the things that just crossed my mind when Father was speaking was, would it be helpful for us? You know, we know that 94 point something cents in every dollar goes to all of these projects in some way. I haven't seen any information. How much percentage goes to food projects, water projects, you know, education, those sorts of things? You know, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking of, you know, and I appreciate, Corey, what you're talking, the Plan Giving and Major Gift piece, because the community I'm going to this weekend, the pastor shared with me, you know, most of the people here are retired. So maybe cash flow is maybe an issue, but, you know, I think with the 2,500, like for a house, I want to throw in there, do you also know of some, maybe 3 other people that might be able to support, and the 4 of you do a house together type of thing? But I think it might be helpful at some point to just see how much goes into these key areas, so that for the general donor, their gift is going in a variety of ways, you know, which I think can be very helpful as well, that they not just zero in on the well or the house, but all of the other key components, you know, job employment,
Sure.
spiritual
Yeah.
outreach, etc.
No, that's good. And I like the word you used. I just want to pull that out because it's definitely tied to the fundraising side of it, which is the motivations, right? And that's the word I used earlier, was emotional. Like, who are you, like, what are you emotionally attached to, knowing that somebody is going to have an emotional preference? But I do appreciate the idea of kind of more impact and more data around impact in each case. And as y'all know, y'all each have your own portal pages where that impact is, and not only diving into that more, but if you don't see something there, that obviously that's why Kathy, Val, Joanne, all y'all, Ashton, all that, why they support you with, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go preach this weekend, and opening that door. I'm going to go preach this weekend. The gospel's on water. Can you give me some more? Just, I don't want just the general well stuff. Can you get, what else do you have on well? You know, being able to kind of open that so that you feel that that's as a resource, they could fire over to you any information, like you're saying, a little bit of a deeper dive. Because I like that, Father Hurley, especially as you kind of open those conversations up. And you know your audience, you know the nuance you want to get to, and other information could really help that. Father Bauer, and then Father Sergio.
All right, thank you. Father John, I think one thing you'll find that's useful, I like the annual report that comes out, and it gives a lot of specifics about monies spent for the different types of projects, as well as how much we give to different countries. So that's one source. But I think, you know, one thing I would like clarification, because as I've gone along, I've learned, you know, it's important to indicate like the $2,500 will help towards building a safe, secure, hurricane-proof home, that type of thing. And I had an interesting situation this week, and I've never had one quite like it. Had a nuclear power specialist, so obviously I knew from my submarine background, he knows engineering, and he was asking me all kinds of technical questions about the wells, how deep do we dig them, all this, and I'm going, I'm not an engineer. I said I know they work, and I know we're able to do it. But this is where I got Joanne involved to help me get him connected with someone that can share more of the technical aspects. But I presume with the wells, the $500 might in some countries actually build the well, but if it's like the homes, it probably varies depending on which country they're being built in, what the overall cost might be. Can you give me a little more information about that?
Yeah, so to that point, also on the website you'll find certain things called field updates, and so some of that information is nice to be able to just personalize that impact. Obviously, some people are going to get into the technical side of it, like what does the 500 pay for the support structure? Well, I mean, you could probably get into some definite weeds, which is not the worst. If somebody's engaged and you might not have the time for that person, handing them to a development person inside of the cross staff could be a good way to deeper engage them. Are you interested in supporting a deep, you know what I mean? So I find a lot of times, though they can be on surface agitating with some questions, most of the time it's meaning somebody's emotional and passionate about this, and we just need to be able to spend time to connect them to the mission. Sometimes there's just an agitation that they may ask a question, but it's also understanding that most of the time people mean well by it, no pun intended, but also or pun intended. But the reality is that giving or gaining them to that spot of deeper engagement is a powerful place to be. Father Sergio?
Yeah, the question was if we have faced any issues with the brochures. And Father Alan and I, we were suggesting before that, especially when we do dual missions, to set the envelopes and to pick them back for the next guy to go into Mass. Sometimes it's almost impossible. We did that, and it was almost to time from Mass to Mass. His envelopes and my envelopes, he has that code, I have another code. And then it was a mess because sometimes people left the envelopes and somebody else took them. The same happens with us who are bilingual, that setting up the Spanish envelopes, then the English envelopes, I just leave it there, and I pick them up as they come, and I put them Spanish Mass, so many, even though they are in English or in Spanish, I put it according to the Mass that it is. I don't know, this is the place, and we need another conversation for this, but I just want to bring that issue because Father Alan and I, we were running Mass after Mass, trying to set up back for one and for the other. I was helping him, he was helping me, and it doesn't look good, unorganized, and it's crazy. It's just too much.
Yeah, Father Hurley?
Yeah, one of the things that could be maybe help with that is maybe the front cover could be a different picture or color, so that those could be easily identifiable without having to look at each brochure and see which is, especially if you're running around trying to deal with brochures, you have to look and see if it's English or Spanish. If they're different colors or cover, it might be helpful, since the brochure is a different brochure anyway because of the language.
I'd like to add to what Father Sergio said. That was an interesting weekend because it was the Mad Hatter routine. But what was kind of comical was the last Mass that I had. I ran short of brochures, so I ended up using some of Father Sergio's anyway. But what I'd like to see, I know you want to keep the stats and we got this X percentage and all this
Sure.
jazz. That's all nice and good, but we don't have that many joint ventures. And I think on those occasions, I would be very happy, just one set of brochures. Obviously, if it's Spanish, you need to have Spanish ones, but I mean, Spanish Mass, but just take the overall, whatever got in, divide by 2. I'm happy with that. Or if you want, just put it aside as an exemption and don't add that to our stats and just focus on the times we're doing solo ventures. But yeah, I remember Father Commanda, we had a big church in Texas that we did together, and God Almighty, that was horrible trying to because it was a huge church. I think this thing seated like 1,500 people. So changing out the brochures was maddening, to say the least. So I think you could spare us a lot of grief, and I think the statistics are useful to a certain point, but let's not just make this so rigid. On
Sure,
dual
no,
assignments,
yeah,
let it be. Let it be.
Joanne, you wanted to add something?
But yes, statistics are very important and we have to have a basis. We have to know where we're starting from. To your point, we understand there's quite a few of you who have had a lot of challenges with the double assignments. And unfortunately, we're probably going to be seeing a lot more. All of you are very aware of how there are many new clusters of parish families. And that's only going to probably see us utilizing, 1, 2, maybe 3 priests at some assignments, which is going to, that affects the weekend inventory and all of that. But the process of using of those brochures, I know is something that's very much on all of our minds. We want to make it as easy as possible, but the statistics is a good place for us to start. And it helps us to learn a lot of what you're encountering, and how we in the office can, get better at that. So we're not doing it to make it challenging for you, by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure. No, and I don't want to get lost into some of the weeds of that to take away from the case, but I think it is important as y'all talk about it to be able to have a voice and to share how that works, how we can improve the brochure, how you can improve. I mean, that is part of, you are the boots on the ground to come back and share that insight. So I hope y'all know it's not only well received, but obviously that's part of the reason why we have the cross staff on here, is to be able to take that and to do something about it. Speaking of that, Kathy, would you like to add?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm so excited to sit here and listen to the insights and the suggestions. And I know a lot of them have been made before. The double assignment footprint is being looked at. It was never put in place. It pre-existed long before we ever did stats. It was just about how many priests are going. So each priest, it was an opportunity for that priest. So just to know, we definitely feel that frustration and understand it. It's been voiced really well, and I really appreciate it being voiced again, and I love the input. The other thing I wanted to just say about the water, just recently, it impacted me when I think about being an advocate. In the mission report, it said, when the water was given, it meant that the children or the women didn't have to go 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours back. So it said that the children were in school and the test scores improved. So if you're talking education, and that the women were freed up to do microfinance and learn educational things. So there's so many pieces that the water begins. When a well shows up, it changes everything. So I just wanted to mention that, because I'm sitting there almost like I'm a parishioner, even though I work for CASA, and talking about what water does. It obviously the water is essential, but it changes children's lives and women's lives. They're the ones that go for the water and bring it back. So if that helps anybody to lead into, for example, we just had a development officer talking to a pastor about that, and he said, I never knew that you do this. We'd like to be an advocate for women. We'd like to support women in this kind of thing. So it does lead into other things. Just to point that out.
No, that is. It's a great connection to be able to say, and to be able to say that each one of these things kind of help shift and change things. Father Tom Eden, you want to share, and then we're going to bring it home. So
Yes, something that might help the other guys. I distribute the brochures in the middle of my homily, and I have the ushers do that. If there's no ushers, as there was this past weekend for 2 masses, I have the altar servers, and one mass didn't have altar servers. I just got the lectors to do it. So that's another way to handle the different languages, and I give them the language for that mass. Anyway, that was my idea.
good, thank you for that, and let us bring this home by being able to, as we do all of our webinars, how can this impact your preaching this weekend, helping you to be able to take a nugget or two. When we learn things, anytime, the human behavior is that if we incorporate it right then and there as the lesson comes on, then it sticks, right? And so this is not just about crossing this threshold of some fancy development technique to make you raise more money. No, it's to help give you the tools that's going to help, obviously, the poor. We do this for the poor, and we do this for Jesus to be able to bring those that are in the pew. I love how Father earlier said, like, you could be a missionary sitting in your pew. And so in that, this work truly is something that is a constant refinement. It's I'm in awe of those that continue to travel, to put themselves out there, to be able to refine your story, to share it. I'm hoping that this was able to bring some new light or insight into when we start talking, or when you start talking about category giving out inside of the case statement, truly understanding how these specific areas impact you and bring forth really the mission of Cross. And so I'm grateful for each one of y'all. Y'all are always so lovely. Today was great. Came out of the gate sharing like mad. So I loved it. That's what these are for, right? I mean, this is for y'all to hear each other. If y'all talk to your fellow OPs, encourage them. Look, the reason why we switched them to every other month and then to do the affinity groups in between is so that y'all would feel comfortable that when you get on here, you're sharing robustly, you're having these conversations. And today was a great example for that. So thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of it. If you have anything, feel free. You know my cell, reach me. And God bless y'all for what you do. Keep the faith, and we'll keep you in prayer.
Thanks, Corey.
All right. Have a great week, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, everybody.